History is going to question whether or not this was just a partisan lynching.
I've been slacking a little bit. Dare I say I've been negligent, if you will. But I'm going to do two stories here. Not particularly in any order. Basically, if you see up on my tabs up there, I start off with Joe Biden. So did you know Joe Biden said that in 98 that Clinton impeachment could be seen as partisan lynching? What happened? And then when Joe was called out on it, he said, this wasn't the right word to use, and I'm sorry about that. Trump, on the other hand, chooses his words deliberately today and used the word lynching as he continues to stoke racial divides in this country daily. He's sorry, so he's not really sorry. Trump used it in the same context as Joe Biden did in 98. And what? This is Joe Biden's response? I mean, I'll read half of the story and go to the BBC story on this too, but Democratic presidential candidate Joe Biden on Tuesday denounced President Donald Trump's comparison of the ongoing impeachment inquiry to a lynching. But in 1998 interview, the then senator from Delaware also invoked the term as a reference to impeachment. The key word here is impeachment is not lynching. It is a part of the Constitution. But then he said it, so then he had to apologize. Yeah, this whole thing is ridiculous. And I saw this when it happened. And I wanted to do a video on this earlier, but I wanted to see if it continued, and it didn't. It stopped after a day and a half, 2 days. And that's how the news cycle is. This is from the BBC. Joe Biden apologizes for 98 remark on lynching. It says, Mr. Trump's invocation of the racist chapter of U.S. history to describe a constitutionally enshrined political process provoked outrage from both major parties. Yeah, the Democrats only care about the political and constitutional process when it suits them. When it doesn't suit them, we need to get rid of the Electoral College because reasons. It was later revealed that the several Democratic lawmakers who criticized Mr. Trump for lynching comment had used the same word in the 90s to defend Mr. Clinton. How this all began, we all know that. He also continued on, said this wasn't the right word to use, and I'm sorry about that. Trump, on the other hand, chooses his words deliberately. What a douche. He apologized, kind of. See, Mr. Clinton was impeached in 98 by the House of Representatives for the lying under oath and obstruction of justice during an investigation into his affair with White House intern Monica Lewinsky. Old news now. So that's basically it. What you see here is just partisan bullcrap. That's all this is. Notice how they didn't care, the news media didn't care in 1998, only 21 years ago, about that lynching remark. Nah. But when Trump does it, stop the presses. We need to investigate. Ridiculous. And continuing on with my favorite Canadian transgendered woman, Jessica Yaniv, loses case against beauticians who refused Brazilian wax. Thankfully, Canada hasn't gone down the tubes yet. It's circling the drain, but it's not there yet. Canadian transgender woman has been accused of using human rights law for financial gain as she lost landmark discrimination case over the refusal of several beauticians to provide her with waxing services. The British Columbia Human Rights Tribunal said Jessica Yaniv, who identifies as a woman but has male genitalia, still has used the law to punish minorities. She seemed hostile to LGBT rights. Snap. The court ordered Ms. Yaniv to pay $2,000 in damages to each of the three respondents who testified at the hearings. All three of them are from minority backgrounds who work out of their homes or in clients' homes. Two were forced to shutter their businesses due to complaints, according to the lawyers. Most of the respondents do not speak English as their first language. The court heard from 5 cases. Ms. Yaniv used Facebook messages to contact salons requesting Brazilian wax, which were supposed to remove all pubic hair. Expert testimony claimed that waxing male genitalia could pose a serious risk of injury if the provider was not had received specific training. Beauticians who appeared at the hearing also took place over 6 days in July claimed that they declined to wax Ms. Yaniv for the number of reasons, including religion and lack of expertise. Yaniv argued that the refusal is a matter of discrimination in violation of British Columbia's Human Rights Code, which forbids the denial of services based on gender identity or expression. In the 10 of the 13 complaints, she sought out of the apology and $3,000, as well as a statement from the tribunal prohibiting the refusal of waxing services based on discrimination. Ultimately, the tribunal concluded that human rights legislation does not oblige a petition to wax genitalia they have not consented or had training to wax. Uh-oh. That's how she lost right there. A very level-headed response to Ms. Yaniv. The conservative legal advocacy organization Justice Center for Constitutional Freedoms, which represented 3 of the respondents, argued that its clients do not offer services Ms. Yaniv requested. No woman should be compelled, I totally agree here, to touch male genitalia against her will, irrespective of identification. Jay Cameron, Justice Center litigation manager, said in a statement. The court also found that Ms. Yaniv had misled the court as to her motives and specifically targeted minority providers. According to the tribunal member Devin Cosino, Ms. Yaniv was partly motivated by her desire to tackle the systemic discrimination in transgender women face in the beauty industry by discriminating against minorities, I guess. However, I find that Ms. Yaniv's predominant motive in filing her waxing complaints is not to prevent or remedy alleged discrimination, but to target small businesses for personal financial gains, Ms. Cosino wrote. In many of the complaints, Ms. Cosino added, Ms. Yaniv was also motivated to punish radicalized and immigrant women based on her perception that certain ethnic groups, namely South Asian and Asian communities, are taking over and advancing an agenda hostile to the interests of the LGBTQ people. In many of the complaints. In the first major case of transgender discrimination in retail in Canada, the proceedings have sparked fervent social media debate. Meanwhile, several right-wing outlets and media personalities, including Alex Jones, the antagonistic American conspiracy theorists, have used the case to rile their followers. No, he didn't. I did a 3-part episode on that whole interview he did with her. There was no... They had to add this at the here at the bottom just to be a left-wing dick. So, if we go to the post-millennial, it says, the world knows what exactly who Jessica Yaniv is. This is from 13 hours ago. So, it says, I can't imagine there's been a single person in Canada apart from the complaint's mother who didn't feel a great wash of relief when trans woman Jessica Jonathan Yaniv lost the case brought up by the BC Human Rights Tribunal against a waxologist who refused to wax Yaniv's balls. Even the most fervent trans activist knows in his or her heart, or they apparently, given Yaniv's public truculence, combined with weird and disturbing history of expressed fantasies around menstruation in adolescent girls, which would crazy time right there, this individual does not project an image that is helpful to the transgender brand. How could you not agree with that? The Story Chronicle was covered by this publication in depth, but is hardly mentioned by our national broadcaster, the CBC, even though the preposterousness of all the elements had made it an international phenomenon. The only explanation is ideology, and CBC certainly is not alone in its journalistic fail. But anyways, continuing on here, I don't want to belabor this article here, but this second to last paragraph is pretty poignant when it comes to really anything when these weird, I guess, social subjects come up and then we don't know how to deal with it. But this is interesting. It says, which is why the HRT decision against Yaniv is a beacon of hope in a dark place. HRTs are generally regarded as bastions of political correctness. Even if a left-leaning HRT can so decisively rule against Yaniv, it can so plainly see the frivolousness of the complaint, and it comes down so squarely on one side of a truth that is seemingly obvious to anyone with common sense, that no woman should ever be forced to handle male genitalia against her will, then a peaceful precedent has been set. If you just think about what's going on here right now in the world, is where we've got some weird things like someone saying, but you're a 60-year-old man. No, I'm not. I'm a 9-year-old girl. And we're supposed to sort of like just go, okay, you accept a lot of other stuff that happens because it doesn't really affect you. But sooner or later, the stuff that doesn't affect you politically will affect you politically. I can't remember what that don't worry if you're not interested in politics. Politics is interested in you, which is kind of like that's the character of the Sphinx in the Mystery Man, where he says stuff like that doesn't really make a lot of sense, but in this instance it does to me. Is that politics will become interested in you regardless if you like it or not. You're going to get wrapped up into it somehow, and if no one can agree on basic tenets, even within biology, then what are you going to do? That's just my opinion, of course. And like Dennis Miller would say, I could be wrong. But that's it for Friday's edition of Why Have You Been Out for 5 Days? Last while.